Okay, let's unpack this. In any kind of long-term commitment, whether you're, say, an entrepreneur grinding through those first lean years.
Or a researcher tackling some multi-decade theory.
Exactly. Or in this case, an artist just maintaining a dedicated practice. At some point, the perspective, it shifts entirely. It stops being about how you manage to keep going.
It becomes about why.
Yes, that deeper question. Why? Why do you keep going when the progress is so uneven and there's really no finish line in sight?
And that shift is pretty much the target of our deep dive today. We're trying to move beyond the usual posters that just say resilience and actually analyze the philosophy behind sustained commitment.
We've got two great sources for this.
We do. We're looking at the concluding thoughts of the documentary podcast series The Artist, and also the career profile of the multidisciplinary artist, Roos van der Jocht, who you might know as Dodoros.
And our mission here is really specific. We are not looking at a success story to find some, magic formula.
Not a retrospective at all.
No. We're trying to examine the anatomy of endurance while it's happening. We want to frame continuation not as some inherent trait you just have, like grit or resilience, but as a conscious, moment-by-moment decision, an active agency.
That distinction is everything. A passive trait versus an active decision. And the series, The Artist, is so important because it promises, and I'm quoting here, orientation, not closure.
I love that.
It's all about the lived, gritty reality. The constant subsidy applications, the rejections, the financial uncertainty. It finds the meaning in the persistence itself, not in some future reward.
Right. And to really feel the weight of that choice, you have to understand the level of commitment we're talking about. This is an abstract theory. This is a real, concrete, long-term practice.
The scope is, well, it's significant. Roos van der Jocht's autonomous practice, Double O Roos, was established back in 1996.
1996, we're talking decades.
Decades, spanning huge economic and technological shifts. And the work itself is multidisciplinary: visual art, photography, film. That alone requires constant retooling.
And that retooling, that's what I think separates simple endurance from active agency. I mean, anyone can just do the same thing for 20 years, but look at the education here. You have the foundational art training from the early 90s.
The Propedeuse Kunst, yeah. Classic studio stuff.
Right. But then, much later, you see this active choice to pursue a micromaster in integrated digital media from NYU in 2020, and then master modules in innovation management more recently.
And that's not just academic curiosity, right? It's a structural necessity. It's a deliberate, proactive move from a more classic studio practice to mastering, well, digital adaptation, innovation.
It's like learning a whole new operating system just to make sure the work can still get made and seen.
And all of that happens while fighting systemic resistance, which the series documents just relentlessly. It says it explores the structural, financial, and psychological conditions of the art world.
Which means what in practice?
In practice, it means subsidy dependency, where your projects live or die by institutional approval. It means rejection as a structural condition. So failure is the default state.
And that creates what the source calls precarity.
Exactly. For you, the listener, what that means is the rent is always uncertain, the next project is always conditional, and the work has to be made despite that instability.
So if we know continuation is happening against resistance, not with it, let's go back to that philosophical point. Why does it matter so much if we call it resilience or agency? Isn't that just semantics?
It's much more than semantics. It's about the cause. Resilience, implies bouncing back after a hit. Agency is the choice to step forward before the hit, knowing it's probably coming.
Ah.
The source calls continuation a quiet decision made precisely when things are most difficult. When recognition is delayed, the outcome is totally unclear. If you see it as just a trait, you just kind of wait and see if you survive.
But if it's agency?
If it's agency, you are actively choosing to invest in the next day's labor.
That makes the cost analysis so much more pointed. If it's a choice, you have to weigh the cost versus what's being preserved. The series shows us the cost, the precarity. But what's on the other side of the scale? What's being preserved?
Well, the art itself, obviously, the films, the photographs, but it's more than that. It's the commitment to the version of yourself that chose this path in the first place.
Right.
And that's the core of the argument. The source says stopping would require denying something fundamental. It ties it directly to identity. So the agency is in protecting the integrity of that identity, no matter what the market says about it.
That's a really powerful internal anchor. especially because we're all sort of conditioned to expect a story to have a neat ending, a clear reward.
The big gallery retrospective, the financial security.
Exactly. But this whole source just resists that. It won't summarize the practice as a journey with an outcome.
Yeah.
So how does this reframe what success even looks like?
Well, we have to consciously avoid that triumph narrative and focus on the reality of endurance. I mean, if you just glance at the CV, you see these huge objective achievements. A finalist for the sculpture tribute to slavery victims at the Louvre, being listed in a 100 photographers to watch.
Major external validation. Most people would call that making it. They'd see that as the arrival point.
And they are powerful milestones, absolutely. But they don't solve the structural problem. The artist still has to write the next grant proposal. And the series is so honest about that. Its integrity comes from focusing on what's still in motion, what's unresolved.
So it's a living document, not a history book.
Precisely. And if you look at the upcoming projects for 2025 and 2026, the Miss Algorithmic short film, The Future Image Lab, that proves it. Those aren't a victory lap. They are proof that the work, the pressure, the uncertainty, it's all constant. It doesn't just end after an award.
So the source is essentially making the case that continuation is the achievement, that success is redefined. It isn't that you won the grant.
It's that you're still in a position to apply for the next one, that you still have the momentum to make the work that's on your mind right now.
Okay, so if that's the framework, then the driving force can't be ambition, which is fickle, or just blind optimism, because that would get crushed. So what's the fuel for this?
It seems to be this profound sense of obligation, a responsibility. The source talks about a responsibility to the ideas that refuse to disappear.
The ideas themselves.
Yes. The suggestion is that the work itself asks to be made.
Let's look at that tension then. On one hand, you have the very real personal and financial cost. On the other, this almost spiritual necessity from the ideas. How do you keep honoring that necessity when the system keeps rejecting it?
And that's where the philosophical weight comes in. The decision to keep going is apparently totally separate from whether an application succeeds or fails. The work exists in the artist's mind, and it's demanding to be made regardless of external validation.
So it's not follow your passion.
No, it's deeper than that. Passion feels emotional, fleeting. This is framed as a necessary relationship, an obligation to the ideas because you believe they have a value that transcends whatever the market thinks this quarter.
It's about being anchored in the now, which is what the series does so well by being a living archive. It's documenting the ongoing condition, not summarizing a past story.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The source doesn't offer closure. It doesn't offer comfort. It offers orientation.
And the value in that, for anyone listening, whether you're an artist or not, is seeing that these complex long-term goals aren't sustained by reaching some plateau of stability.
No, they're sustained by continuous negotiation, by that moment-to-moment choice to just stay present in the process.
So the big takeaway is that persistence gets redefined. It's not a passive trait you hope you have. It's an active, very costly decision. It's agency.
So maybe here's the final thought to leave with you. If persistence is an active, costly decision, what choices in your own life, professional, creative, whatever, what choices would you start to re-examine through that lens? Through the lens of commitment to an idea's necessity, rather than just waiting around for optimism or an external reward. The work continues.